I'll have to.
So we are live. I'm here with my new friend, Michael Schmitt. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and you, David?
Very good to see you. And we tried to do this last Tuesday. What happened?
I didn't put it in my calendar. I forgot all about it. Sorry. You guys on the
And
podcast, and to you, David. I'm sorry.
now you've confessed it, so I can forgive you because you confessed it publicly. I'm just joking. So I told you that we don't really plan these talks. It's more spontaneous, but I did give you a little hint that I'll ask you to sort of talk about your faith journey from an early age and just touch on the things that you think might be interesting and that aren't too delicate to share. So
Yes.
what do you want to tell us about your journey so far up until today, starting way back?
Well, first of all, I saw your description of your CVS podcast, and you're saying it's a Catholic podcast with non-Catholic guests.
Yeah.
And well, here you have a Catholic guest today.
That's good. That's good. Well, it's just like Raisin Bran. It has raisins in it. It's not just raisins, but it has raisins. You know, it's with raisins, but there's other stuff. And so I started by not interviewing any faithful Catholics, only dissident Catholic, so-called Catholics like sedevacantists, rad trads, and stuff like that. And then I just decided, let's include the faithful Catholics. And so, yeah, it's open to everyone. And I've done a lot. I've done about 330 episodes now. And it's mostly atheists and Protestants, if I'm being honest with you. Because that's what we have in Canada more than faithful Catholics.
Tell me about it. Indeed, I know that. Well, what I'd like to tell you today, if you ask me about my
upbringing,
my upbringing and my journey into believing, I guess I had a very traditional introduction to belief and to Catholicism. In Germany, indeed, my native country, born and brought up in Germany by two Catholic parents. My mother has always been, I think, a believer all her life. My father raised as a Catholic, but then for social reasons, didn't go to church, but still, obviously, they wanted me to get baptized, and I did my first communion, and that was all out of my own conscience, or not out of, but out of my control and beyond my conscience. But when I did my confirmation at age 15, I happened to have a 18 or 19-year-old teacher,
wow,
a volunteer, a girl. And that was great to have a young person, strongly involved. And she had a great impact on my development later on, not right then. But I now recognize she had that impact later on. When then I didn't go to church often, and then I started studying, and then church didn't see me. I didn't have time for that. I went out partying and then other things. But then I remember another moment in time when I lived in a very small city, doing my studies 100 miles away from my hometown. And on Sundays, sometimes I was alone, chilling, hanging out after Saturday party. So where would I go? Maybe cycling a bit. And then I found the local church. In Germany, churches are always open, at least on Sundays, oftentimes the entire week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I would go to that church and chill there. I literally laid down on the bench and did what you may be calling meditating, enjoying the calm. But I wasn't actually praying or something, but I liked being in that church.
Mm.
And another 2 or 3 years later, it was time to move to Canada, and to make sure that my girlfriend would, be a solid partner in that journey to another continent. I asked her for marriage, or how do you say, I proposed to her. And a year later, we married, first civilly, and then a year later in church.
Nice.
I felt I wanted that.
She was
Yeah.
raised Catholic?
Yes, to some extent. She stopped her journey after First Communion.
Okay. A lot of people do.
And
you've been married like 17 years or something like that?
yeah, good memory, David. Exactly. 2005 we married.
Nice.
Indeed. And
so you got married in what year? It was 17 years ago. I can't do the math. It was
2005.
2005, you said. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So was Canada all you wanted it to be in terms of your spiritual expectations for the church and all that sort of thing? Did you settle in to find a parish and all that, or were you not really practicing? You and your wife were not really practicing so much at that time, or what?
In the first years, no, we're still going out a lot, partying. We're in the 20s or late 20s then, and had other things on our minds. But I do remember, again, I did connect with the local parish, and I do remember participating in the annual or in the Christmas creche competition.
Yeah.
And
The nativity, the little nativity scenes.
Nativity scene competition that they called, because I did go from time to time, maybe once a month or once every 2 months.
In Montreal?
In Montreal, indeed, in Villeray.
Oh, okay. What's the parish there? It's not the blue one, is it?
They've got a nice blue one, and the one I went to, because I lived literally across the street, is called Notre Dame du Rosaire.
Oh, okay.
On Villeray and Christophe Colomb.
Yeah, I've never been there, but I've passed by it.
Relatively nice. And I went there a couple of times without actually connecting with the people there. But I did connect in 2019 with the new parish. We moved inside of Villeray to another corner of that neighborhood. So I've got a new church. And there I did connect with the local people, and they were very happy to have a relatively young person helping out and committing to do some work. And ever since 2019, I've been giving Sunday school, I call it. I don't know what's the right term, catechism,
Yeah.
To groups of 8 to 11-year-old.
Uh-huh.
And I've been in the church committee, helping out to rent the basement of the church. I'm proud of, I can say I really contributed a lot to the financial security of the parish.
Nice.
By putting up ads, having people visit the place, negotiating leases, signing the leases. So we've got a number of good tenants now that regularly pay, and I'm very glad about that.
Very important. Yes. Because the financial aspect of the church is sometimes poo-pooed as being not sacred or being profane, and so it's neglected for that reason, or it's just overlooked and people resent giving to the church. And there's a lot of struggle in the Catholic Church in Canada. I don't know about elsewhere, but in Canada, a lot of struggle. And you've seen for yourself the condominiums, the gyms that are replacing churches, turning sacred spaces into profane, desecrated spaces. And I was just reading in canon law last night how there's a ritual that needs to be done if you want to reestablish it. Like a new blessing needs to be given, and a cleansing needs to be done if you want to bring it back to its status as a sacred place, so it could be a church. So a lot of desecration going on in Montreal in the churches.
You go somewhere between Papineau and Christophe Colomb on the 40. There is a church built in the 60s being demolished right now. Each time I pass by, I think, what a pity. This community, this parish, old people only, slowly dying, no newcomers, nobody cares, and then you end up having no priest, you end up having no parishes.
Yeah.
And then the only option that remains is selling the building. What can you do? Well, what can I do? I try to do my little share in investing time teaching Jesus to 8, 9, and 10-year-olds.
What are the tools you use? Do you actually use the new catechism to teach the children, or do you use the UCAT, or what do you use? Or do you use your own notes in the Bible, or what do you just improvise, or what do you use?
I'm curious, you mentioned UCAT. I didn't think it was so international. I ordered it from a German Christian edition house. In German language for my sons. They never actually read it, but I'm familiar with the concept, and I know it's an international concept. Yeah. No, I don't use that. What I use is a helpful binder that I was given by the responsible lady, and I improvise a lot. Now, going into my 3rd year, or having just finished my 3rd year, I become quite at ease, and I improvise a lot. And I go over and beyond what we've got a book, or even actually 2 books, Au fil des saisons, and something with Sur le chemin de l'amour, that inspire me a lot. But
is that a famous author that wrote those?
I'm sorry, David?
Are those books you just mentioned by a famous author? Chemin de l'amour, it sounds familiar.
They are. These are more leaflets or well, they are,
pamphlets, small booklets, little booklets.
It's the Office Québécois. It's the official Quebec.
Okay, it's like the diocese, the archdiocese presents materials. Okay.
We've got a number of those books at church, and then the kids would work with them. I use them a lot, but there's too much information inside. We can't cover that possibly in 1.5 hours. The activities suggested are for an entire day, basically. So we only use a small portion of that.
And how much emphasis is there on exposing the children to the stories of the Bible, Old and New Testament? Like, what fraction would you say is made up by biblical stuff?
0 Old Testament. It's all New Testament only.
Okay.
And it's, basically 100%. There's an introductory story about Alex or some friends doing this and that.
Okay.
Then we jump into the Bible. We read the corresponding text out of Jesus's life. and then I ask questions, we discuss their opinions. Then we go back to a real life story the kids can connect better to. And I use video a lot too. I found a great Superman, the original Superman movie, has a great scene where he talks to his kryptonite father, and his earthly father would say, "You need to let me go now. You need to go out to the people and help them. I have raised you, but now you're on your own." It's like Joseph saying to Jesus, "Look, I had you for a couple of years. Now you're..." And it's fascinating what you can find in pop culture to interest 8, 9, 10 years old. There's many ways to
engage them.
To grasp their attention.
So they like that kind of stuff, I would imagine, very much, yeah?
Yeah, that was a very successful episode.
Very cool. And what have you learned? How has this teaching strengthened your faith? In what way? Is it because of the innocence of the children, or is it because of the teachings themselves that you're getting more deeply familiar with? Or what would you say?
That's a great question, because it's basically the reason why I continue, and I will continue to do that, even when my 2 sons are now out of the age. My little son has just finished, and I'm going to continue because I understand so much more when you have to explain it in simple words. And also the preparation of the courses I give make me think about what I'm going to tell them. And then stories you and I know, and I have known them for 10 and 20 years, but suddenly they make sense. And suddenly I know that, wow, okay, this is how it was meant.
Wow.
It helped me a great deal in understanding many of these parables and stories. And it's also going to motivate me to alternate, not to use my old slides from last year and the old videos from last year. I'm genuinely interested in going deeper and learning more about the New Testament and about Jesus. So I think that will be the driving force for me to continue to find new exciting stories or comparisons to in pop culture and illustrations.
Wow. Are there parts of the Bible that trouble you? Well, I mean, the Old Testament, it's easy to find troubling passages, but in the New Testament, are there parts you struggle with because you find it difficult to see how this particular teaching can be understood, even as an adult? Like, for example, the parable of that sneaky manager, or whatever, the one who went and took the bill and said, instead of 100, write 50. You know that story? I don't know if you know that parable of the servant or the manager who was going to be fired for embezzling. He said, "I'm too weak to dig and I'm too ashamed to beg, so I'm going to go around to all my boss's clients and I'm going to reduce their bills." And Jesus said that this is a sort of worldly wisdom, and somehow we're supposed to, as Christians, we're supposed to get a lesson out of this story. If you're not familiar with the parable, I suggest you look into it and then prepare a little teaching lesson so you can teach me what it means, because I have no idea. Does it sound familiar to you?
No, it does not. It sounds very interesting because it's linked to economy and logic and justice, I believe. And to answer your question, here's the one that I don't get yet. It's the parable where the boss or the father, no, it's the father who sends, no, let's get that. It's the manager who hires workers at 8 a.m.
Ah, the 11th
Goes
hour.
back to the labor market, and he hires more workers at 10 a.m. and then some last ones at noon. And at the end of the day, he gives each a dinar.
Same wage.
Everybody gets the same.
Mm.
And the ones who worked for 12 hours, they complain. Of course they do. And I yet have to understand the justice in paying workers the same for 6 than for 12 hours.
Well, the idea.
I'm a Libra.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a Libra, and I don't see my sense of justice is hurt.
Oh, yeah. Well, that one's easy for me because it's not the case that the boss ripped off those who worked the longest. He gave them the promised wage. He gave them what was due to them. But he gave a bonus, like he was extra generous with those who didn't work as much. And you have to realize that it's about conversion. It's about deathbed conversions, so that we understand not only deathbed conversions, but conversions of people that were sinners through different proportions of their lives as compared to the righteous. Like Jesus was always telling the righteous Jews of his day, he was calling them hypocrites and saying they're putting burdens on the people that they themselves can't even carry, and they don't do anything to help them. And there's a lot of religious hypocrisy, and they're claiming to be righteous. So Jesus Christ was always talking about how he came for the sick and the lost. And this parable just goes to show you that if someone was a prostitute or a tax collector for their whole lives, and then at the last minute they convert, they're going to get the full promise of salvation, which is the joy of heaven. So have you never thought about it that way?
No, but it sounds extremely logical.
Yeah.
Or makes perfect sense. Yes.
It could be a good interpretation. I don't know. That's how I've always seen it, and I'm pretty sure I've heard the saints talk about it that way. It's the sort of standard interpretation of that. And it's good for me because I think about myself and how I converted late in life at age 39. And I was actually a Satanist before. So I was an atheistic Satanist and was, on my way to hell for sure. And, I still worry every day that I might not, say yes to the graces or cooperate properly with the graces. I don't lay awake at night worrying about it, but I know, just as St. Paul teaches, that we just have to look ahead to the prize and keep our eyes on the prize and not get distracted and not think that we're once saved, always saved, like a lot of the other Christian communities teach. I think that's a dangerous teaching that.
To say once saved,
always saved.
Saved.
You're in. Like purportedly, Luther said, sin and sin boldly, because you're, there's no sin that you can do that will remove the justification that you've received once you accept Christ by faith and faith alone, right? And he didn't like the book of James. He wanted to remove the book of James from the Bible because James emphasizes very strongly that we have to have works and that faith without works is dead. And so he wanted to remove that. He called it the Epistle of Straw. I don't know if you're familiar with Luther, being a German, but was he German or was he?
He was, most definitely. He invented the German language. I mean, he contributed to establishing the High German, the language that was understood from Vienna to Hamburg and from Stuttgart to Königsberg, because he used a certain. Well, he translated the Bible.
Yeah.
And that Bible obviously was then used across the German-speaking areas. So he unified the German language. Very important.
Wow, nice. Wow. Do you need to get that?
I need to hand it over to somebody else. Excuse me.
No problem. Hey, Joe.
I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem.
I can't, my
Don't worry
home,
about it.
so I'm
That's interesting.
didn't,
Uh,
didn't cut my home phone.
I'd like to talk, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk. We're going on tangents here, but that's fine. That's the way it works. But I'd like to talk a little bit about Luther and my sort of love-hate relationship with him because
Yes.
it's only after I became a Catholic. I was raised Protestant, and then I lost my faith at age 14, and then I was, atheist or whatever. Went down some dark pathways. But when I came back to the Catholic Church, I was not a fan of Luther. Especially because of digging in a lot to the Catholic writings. But since that time, I've mellowed out a little bit, and I've started to appreciate Luther. Knowing that he's a heretic and that he was a horrible, horrible man. But I started to appreciate some of the simplicity of his approach to salvation. Like I do appreciate a lot of the Protestant pastors, for example, that I listen to as I'm driving around at work on AM radio, and their style of direct, very almost oversimplified Christianity. Do you need to deal with your immediate situation?
Very seldom that my tenant and neighbor comes downstairs and calls Briar. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you could deal
I
with it.
don't deal with anything. But I'm not so familiar with Luther's heretic
His history?
behavior, and
No?
no, I'm
You
not.
didn't know that he was a monk, a Catholic monk that he broke his vows and got married? No?
I knew about the monk part, and I knew obviously that he wasn't agreeing with the Catholic Church's teachings,
Yeah.
and that he had 99 points of criticism that he put up in his hometown's church doors. And yes, I think I've heard about the marrying later, but it was.
He was into some nasty stuff. And do you know the Pope bashing that he did was very juvenile and crass? Did you know that? No.
Okay, no.
Look up, just Google Luther Pope cartoons, and you'll see like fart jokes, toilet jokes, just one after the other that he had illustrated to malign the Vicar of Christ. So, I mean, even if I think Scientology is an evil cult, I'm not going to make a bunch of perverted toilet jokes about the leader of Scientology or the head of Scientology, right? It's just not classy, and I don't think it's a godly endeavor.
Yeah, I'm always, I love history and I know a little bit about history, and I'm always wary or prudent of judging past times with today's standards.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, millions of Europeans didn't find that so crass and so heretic and so they did agree, and they from king to peasant would follow his teachings, and they thought it was the right thing to think and to do. So I think we should give him the credit of having had success.
Yeah. It's an interesting time because there was a counter-reformation too, where the actual Catholic saints were fighting against the same corruption that Luther was fighting against. It's obvious that there's corruption in the church, always has been, always will be. That's very obvious, especially during COVID. We see that, right? I'd love to talk to you about that if you want to open that can of worms.
I am.
You can see I got the shirt for it.
I had a phone call from the parish lady today asking me to, last week she called if I can put something up on the Facebook page I created for the parish, which I did. And today she asked me to two more things, to put up some billboards, to make and to put up some billboards around the church. And then I would tell her, look, it did hurt that our priest despite my asking him kindly if I can access the church between September 1st or December 20th and what was it, March 14th. He would decline and then tell me, no, I can't do that. I've got my orders. I can't let you in if you don't have a vax passport. And he didn't say, I would like to, but I can't. He said, I don't want to. And I have orders from above. He prays for me, he said, that I get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And that cooled me off quite a bit. So I told that parish lady who called today, 2 hours ago, that I'm available to update the Facebook page because it takes me 5 minutes. But for the time being, I don't feel comfortable investing more time to make billboards, put them up. That is, my experience with COVID and Catholic Church when you ask about it. But beyond that, obviously, there's beyond my little story, there's a lot of compliance, much too much compliance going on. And they only very, very few Catholic voices around the world. I don't know anybody apart from maybe that Ottawa priest who wrote a relatively critical letter to the, how is that then called, the Archbishop's Synod or what?
Yeah.
Apart from that, there's only so few voices in the Catholic Church raising concerns, raising voices against discrimination, against playing an active role in the governments, in the supranational organizations' plan to make us all sheep and robots and numbers. That is on a larger scale. I was disappointed by our little parish, but on a larger scale, I'm very disappointed by the Catholic Church and by the Pope to 100% play the game like anybody else, like any other institution in this Western world. That's a great disappointment to me.
Yeah, to me too. Do you know my story with getting thrown out of a church? Do you know that story?
No, I don't know.
I'll tell you briefly because I've said it so many times on the podcast, but my few listeners will get bored of hearing me say it. But I talked to, as soon as they announced the Vax passport in Quebec, Monsieur Legault, I phoned Archbishop Christian Lepine, and I spoke with his underling, and the underling assured me, he actually, the secretary or whatever it was, talked, like while I was waiting on the line, went and talked to Archbishop Christian Lepine with my question and came back with the answer. And the answer was, no, you will never be denied access to the church based on your vaccination status. Not going to happen. So I got reassurance that I knew I was never going to get vaccinated. So I wanted to phone my Archbishop and find out, am I ever going to be denied access to Catholic Church? And he said no. Okay. And then later, before the Vax Pass was mandatory on all places of worship, one of my favorite places of worship is St. Joseph's Oratory, the big one on the horizon in Montreal. You see it in the postcards. St. Brother Andre is there, his body is there and stuff like that. And I just love it there, even though, there may be some very questionable priests. I've met a couple of creepy priests there, but for the most part, good priests. But I went there and they had just introduced their own pilot project, Vax Passport, just for that one oratory, St. Joseph's Oratory. It wasn't in place anywhere else. So I had misunderstood the directions on the website. I knew it said that there's a mass for the vaxxed, a mass for the unvaxxed. I just showed up the wrong time on the wrong day. I just got confused when I looked at the website. So it was my fault. But I had biked for 45 minutes through the freezing cold to get there in the middle of winter. And I told them I'm coming in because the Archbishop told me I'll never be turned away from a Catholic church based on my vax status. So I'm coming in. And so the security guards, two of them, held me, and 3 cops came and threw me out. And then I phoned the Archbishop's office again. I told them what happened. They said, no, that's not right. You have access. You should go in. Go back and talk to the priest. So next Saturday, I went back and I talked at the front door. I said, I'm coming in. I'm not vaxxed. They said, you need a vax passport. I just walked in. The woman started chasing after me. She was calling security. I found my priest that I've known for years, started talking to him. And then along comes the security guard who recognized me. He said, you're in big trouble. You should never come back. You're in big trouble, big trouble, big trouble. And I said to the priest, thank God I found you. Now you can help me. And he just ignored me and went on his way and let the security guard throw me out. And it was a very violent treatment that I got. Okay. So I was roughed up. I still have a lump on my leg where my shin got smashed when he was just ragdolling me around. And he threw me down. He dragged me all the way up the stairs, out the front door, smashed me through everything, and threw me onto the concrete outside and put his knee on my chest until the cops came. And at one point he stood me up and took me over to the side, and then the cops came, whatever. 6 cops this time. And I just explained to the cops, as I'd been explaining to everyone, that there's a hierarchy in the church, right? And that there's God at the top, and then the Pope, and then the bishops and the priests, and so on and so forth. And I got it from the bishop that it's my God-given right to worship in Catholic Church during the normal hours of operation, right? I'm not going at midnight when it's closed and asking to break in. He promised me I wouldn't be turned away, and I was turned away. And I said, there's a chain of command, and I have it on the authority of the bishop. And they said, well, the bishop has no authority here. And I don't know if they understand the hierarchy, or maybe they're directly under the Pope, and Pope Francis is okay with enforcing this sort of thing. I'm not sure. But I got the names of the security guards, and I'm sitting on those names. Maybe I'll go and talk to these boys. They're just young boys in their 20s, 30s. Maybe one day I'll go back and talk to them. And I did talk to that priest, by the way. And I was sort of chastising him very gently, just saying, like, if you're my friend, as you claim to be, because we've known each other for years, I don't think he would consider me a friend. But I asked him, are you my friend? He said, yes. I said, well, then why didn't you help me? He said, because I have no power, I have no authority. Which is not true. I mean, he's a priest. He's a priest of God. He's a priest of God in a place of worship. He's a priest in the church. So, very, very disappointing.
David, this is a beautiful illustration of a man with no guts and no balls in his pants. And match too many of those. In 2020, no one will stand up for what's right. And that is why a situation like this COVID thing can possibly happen.
Yeah.
Many people don't know what's right. They do what they are told. Then there are many people who know what's right, but don't stand up for what's right and do what they are told anyway. And then there's a tiny little fraction, a fringe fraction of the population
with unacceptable views,
who know what's right and who stands up. That stands up. And I strongly believe 20, 30, or 50 years ago, that wouldn't have gone through. Other things have happened, and we know that there were situations in history where mass hypnosis did happen. But I still think we've got one important factor of why they can do with the people what they can do is because there's no backbone anymore, and there's no balls in the pants anymore. Or much less than in the past, or much less than we should have. I don't know if in the good old times everything was better. But as a matter of fact, here we are with a maximum of 10% of the population that feels what's good for them, what's right for the nation, for the people, and that act accordingly. 5 to 10%, not more.
Today I was at just one of many stories I could tell about the mask situation. I was at a store getting supplies for my work because part of my work in construction is just dealing with suppliers, okay? So I just refuse to wear a mask in any of these places. There's certain places I do conform, and I do wear the mask under my nose, just because like at the grocery store, I've been doing that typically. I've started now wearing it just on my chin. But at most construction places, I get away with it. But in this one, there were a lot of, not to be sexist, but it was a lot of women behind plexiglass, and they were all wearing their masks. And I'd been there one time before, and I knew that they always ask me to wear a mask when I go in, and I just say, well, it's in the truck or whatever, and they offer me one. Here, you can have one of ours. But I saw the boss walking around, the big boss, like he's the big boss, and he wasn't wearing a mask. So he came up and he said, what's happening here? And he said, okay, it's all right, just sign the paperwork and get the thing and whatever. So he didn't make me put the mask on because he knows it's bullshit. Like, I don't want to be sexist, but it seems like the guys in construction, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, it seems like guys are more likely to think it's bullshit. Do you agree?
I do agree, and it corresponds to my experiences in Maxis, in where do I go? Canadian Tire, in smaller stores, where in the past 4 weeks I've started to simply go in no mask at all.
Yeah.
And my line is, do you have a mask? Yes. Then that's the first hurdle. The person needs to ask, can you please put it on? Then I say no. I've got an exemption. No, I don't put it on. I've got an exemption. And in 90% of the cases, the discussion ends there.
Yeah.
And the situations where it didn't end was always women. And I was surprised how friendly people are when you tell them, no, I can't put the mask on, I've got an exemption. In Canadian Tire, where you would think, oh, they've got orders from Ottawa or wherever the headquarters are in Toronto, but actually they are very understanding and very friendly when you tell them, no, I've got an exemption. So mainly positive feedback. And just yesterday, same Ultramar gas station, the lady behind her plexiglass with the mask on would ask me to put a mask on and then turned away. I was prepaying my gas, cash, because using cash is very important, David. That's another topic we may want to touch.
Sure.
So I wanted to prepay my gas, and she would turn away, not accepting my dollar bills. I would have been out in 5 seconds' time. No, well, then I figured, wait, I can either put that freaking mask on and then leave, or I can take my money back and then leave, which I did. And walked 500 meters on Saint Laurent and used the next Ultramar. And the young lady there, she wouldn't say anything. So my bottom line here is women of a certain age are the worst mask wearers.
Yeah, it's weird. I had a new idea. Like I wear a neck gaiter. It's like a sort of like just the neck part of a turtleneck that goes around my neck, and then I just pull it up as a mask. But I love it because it keeps my neck warm, especially in the winter. But I was thinking, I just had a new idea of what I could say. It's kind of too bad the mask mandate's going to end soon. It's going to end on May 14th. But I wanted to try this one.
Don't be so optimistic.
But I was going to say, they're going to say, like, hey, do you have a mask? Yeah. And I would say, yeah. I'd point to it. And then they'd say, can you wear it? I was like, yeah, I'm wearing it. And then they'd say, no, you're not. You got to wear it over your mouth. I say, no, I have a hole in my neck that I breathe through. I only breathe through my hole in my neck. It's just a joke, right? But I want to see what reaction I could get. Like if I'm telling him with a straight face, that I have a tracheotomy. There's a hole that I breathe through in my neck, and my mask is covering my breathing hole. What would they say? What would they say?
Here's a better joke. Here's a better joke. I've got screen prints or screen prints
grabs, yeah.
from Quebec government Twitter account where people asked, if I have an exemption, can the merchant or the store manager kick me out? And the answer is no. If you declare to have an exemption, they can take a picture of it, or no, they can note it, date, time, name, exemption declared, but they cannot kick you out of the store.
Can they ask to see it? Can they ask to see your exemption card?
I actually have it not far away. My exemption folder is right here.
Okay. I've seen this online.
And this is the exemption. You simply declare that you have a medical or psychological issue with wearing the mask.
Yeah.
And then you self-declare yourself exempt. And when they go further, then you have the print screen of the government of Quebec. Letting them know that they cannot kick you out.
Nice.
If a customer declares he's exempt, they cannot kick you out. And I never needed to use that. Actually, I've seen one guy having that always with him, and he gave me all the paperwork, and I laminated it and everything.
Yeah.
I never use it because, hey, who's got that with me all the time? No, I don't. So I started to simply declare I have an exemption. And again, 95 or 90% of the time, all fine, all good. I was actually touched on the shoulder by a Canadian Tire employee when I told him I'm exempt. Oh, then it's okay. Have you ever been touched by a Canadian Tire employee?
No.
I have now.
Wow. That's incredible. So yeah, it's we can use their compliance against them, basically, is what you're saying.
And so the joke, I mean, your hole in the throat is a joke, but the joke, my papers show that, hey guys, yes, you've been bullshitted through this entire time. For 2 years, they've been bullshitting you. You didn't need to wear a mask if you didn't want to.
Yeah.
And here's the proof. Black on white by the government of Quebec.
I was also going to make another joke. It's a little bit more crass, where I say I breathe through another orifice and I've got a diaper down there. That's where I breathe through. So do you want to check? I don't think that would fly with the women of a certain age.
David, I think you're like many others, me included. We become very courageous towards the end where we feel it's going to end anyway. So 2 weeks before, we are very heroic in not masks over the nose, but here, wow. So I haven't dared to do these things in a maxi in 2020 or 2021. I started in February this year when I really got fed up and said, look, the pandemic's freaking over. Even for me, it has never started.
Yeah.
It was never a pandemic. But even for the last believer, it's now over, isn't it?
It should be. I mean, Klaus Schwab said it's the least deadly pandemic in 2,000 years. That's what he says in his book, The Great Reset.
He said it's the
least deadly pandemic in 2,000 years. But it's a good opportunity. It's a good opportunity to implement a lot of these things for the ecology. So that's the end game.
Of course. And that is why I pay up to $300 bills. I pay them cash. I go to the bank, I get money regularly, and then I pay cash from $5 to $300.
Why is that important?
Because digital identity and digital currency go hand in hand.
Okay.
Once they control your money in your bank account, they control you. But to do that, they need both digital identity and digital currency. And both is being prepared right now. And not only prepared, it's been prepared the past 10 years. It's being rolled out right as we speak.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely convinced, and you only have to go to the Bank of Canada's website to learn more about their plans of a digital dollar. It's all official.
So what's the most radical preparation you made other than just using cash? Have you got stockpiles of food for the supply chain issues and all that sort of stuff?
There is one major preparation on the financial side that I cannot talk about. And mentally, I prepared I've got a piece of land in the north, and even though right now it's just a piece of forest or woods, I mentally prepared to make it viable and livable, and to self-sustain myself.
Cool. Sounds exciting.
Other than that, well, I did buy my cans of food in March 2020.
Okay.
And they are still around. I brought some of them to Ottawa to the protests.
Oh, nice. Have you been following Rolling Thunder or whatever it's called, the bikers? Have you been following that this past weekend?
And I learned about it only on Friday, so no, I haven't followed it. I've dealt with some other issues.
Yeah.
I haven't been very active ever since mid of February in the movement.
Okay.
Except for one little protest 2 weeks ago here in Montreal.
Okay.
But seems like it was a big protest in Ottawa last Saturday.
A lot of cops, yeah, a lot of cops, and a lot of friendly protesters, peaceful protesters. There was a guy, an army chaplain who just went by the title Padre, which I guess would imply that he's a priest of some sort. Hopefully a Catholic priest. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to find out who he was, but he might very well have been a Catholic priest. The only other option for someone claiming to be a priest would probably be Anglican, and he seemed way too manly to be Anglican. But so he's probably Catholic. But he gave a good speech, against Trudeau, but a loving speech where he's praying and he's asking us to pray for Trudeau's conversion because he's in danger of hellfire and these sorts of things. And we need to warn the bad Catholics, especially Biden, Trudeau, and so on, about the dangerous game they're playing with their eternal salvation, like claiming to be Christian, claiming to be Catholic, and to push abortion and to push globalist agendas and slavery and stuff like that. It's a dangerous game they're playing.
I do strongly believe that what's happening now is against God's will. God wanted us to be free, to be independent, to make our own choices, and being coerced into changing one's body, or not changing, but putting something in your body against your will cannot possibly be God's will. I realized that thought, or that philosophy, or whatever, that reasoning I have when I had to book an Air Canada flight in winter. And I wanted to be truthful, so I didn't want to find some alternative solution. And I found a YouTube channel called Don't Talk TV by a Stratford, Ontario lawyer, Nicholas Wanspotter.
Okay.
He looks at the entire thing from a legal standpoint, and he's also a former Canadian Army officer. And he explained that there are not loopholes, but exemptions to the vax mandate for flying in Canada. I our local priest signed me a letter confirming that I do church school and church committee and been a helpful member of the community, blah, blah, blah. And with that in hand, I wrote a 2-pager explaining that I cannot alter my genetic structure with some medical treatment, because I believe that as I am right now, my immune system, as it has been given to me by God himself, is good, just like it is. And
you see, you can read my shirt, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I sent that to Air Canada on December 30th, far earlier than the 21 day prior to my flight. I have not heard back yet. That is now 4 months.
Ooh.
No answer whatsoever. I did find a way to fly no matter or
Nonetheless,
despite.
yeah.
But that's there's legal exemptions, and they don't even bother to answer you. But apart from that, doesn't matter, Air Canada. My point is that going back a little bit to the religious discussion we had earlier, I think good Catholics should inform themselves what is being put in their bodies, and then either based on abortion, baby cells being used in vaccines, or vaccines not being vaccines but gene modifying treatments, and once informed, they should refuse, maybe even must refuse. But hey, the Pope in the back, it's easy to say yes and amen.
Yeah, a good friend of mine who's probably going to listen to this didn't want to get it, but he got pressure from his hospital, a Catholic hospital, to get it, and he said, well, Pope Francis supports it, so how bad can it be? And thankfully he hasn't had any short-term side effects, which is good. Just got to wait and see what the midterm and long-term effects of this stuff is, and let's hope that most people got something that was not even viable in the slightest, because these are very delicate, fragile molecular compositions which have very stringent temperature control regulations attached to them. -70 for Pfizer, 70 below Celsius for Pfizer. And early on, the supply chain custodian said it's impractical. We can't maintain 70 below Celsius during the whole voyage from A to B. And Pfizer, what did they say? They said, oh, well, then don't worry about it. So what people are getting basically, I think a lot of the time, is a big shot of nothing. And that suits the government fine, because the disease is not deadly. Really, realistically, it's not that much more deadly than a bad flu season or whatever. And the whole point is not the alleged virus. The whole point is compliance, right?
I'm parted or confused. I'm not sure which part is more important. Forcing people into compliance. Not only follow rules, but put substances in their bodies? Or is it really, I don't want to go too far, but is it really substances that make you dependent on more, that alter, fragilize, jeopardize, or weaken your immune system, so you need to get more and more and more in order to stay healthy? Is it compliance, or make you dependent, like fixing you up with a drug? Because that's what we see. We've seen immune system responses go down after each dose. Each dose holds only for 3 months and no longer 6 months. I mean, with real good vaccines, we've got 5 or 10 years efficacy. And here we've got, what, 5 or 10 days? What is that for a vaccine?
Yeah, you heard about the whole negative what's it called? Safe and effective. Negative effectiveness of the, I forget which one it was. They did a study in the UK, in Britain, and there was a negative effectiveness. So my whole premise from the start of the so-called pandemic has been, number one, free will. I have free will. I'm free to choose. There's nothing you can do to change my mind. I have free will. Yes, I do. And I'm going to exercise my free will. Thank you very much. I am going to exercise my free will. Thank you very much. That's pretty much the end of the conversation, right? But there's also the other point about safety and efficacy. Is it safe and effective? If it is, leave me alone. If it's not, leave me alone. It's just like there's nothing. They have nothing. They have nothing but a bluff and fear tactics. But if you're a thinking human being that knows that you're not an ape, that you have free will, you're a human being with reason and free will. And if you think about the whole, evolution, Darwinism thing, it's been undermining this notion that humans are special. They're made in the image and likeness of God, which means you have reason and free will. It's undermining that. It's undermining the fact that there's a human nature. We really do have a human nature. We were created with a human nature, and we are not apes. It's undermining all of that, and it's also contributing to the whole transhumanism thing, because why would we stop the evolution? If there's evolution, we came from a single-cell amoeba billions of years ago or whatever it was, and we're going to keep evolving, right? And we're sentient, and we're aware of it, and we're so smart, trust the science, so now we can take control of this project of evolution. Why not? Why wouldn't we? So we start manipulating the development of humans, and then there's no more gender, a man, a woman, like we can insert the fetus in the man's anus, and we can pretend that it's a woman giving birth. We can do all this stuff because there's no God, and we're just nothing has a nature. Things just are what they are, and we can manipulate them with our science and our technology. So it's very, very demonic. And I'm a young Earth creationist. I don't believe in evolution. I believe the universe is about 7,000 years old, and I believe that our children and for generations, we've been having our faith in God undermined, and everything that's precious, our human nature, the family, intimacy, marriage. These are the bedrock. These are supposed to be the bedrock of human society, right? And so what are we going to have as a result? We're going to have pornography. We're going to have prostitution. We're going to have divorce. We're going to have contraception, all these evils. We're going to have crime, more crime. So it's scary.
You say we are going to have, we do have, right? And ongoing for many years already. We are in Sodom and Gomorrah, basically. Difficult to stop that as a single human. We can only do small parts. You do a podcast, I do Sunday school. We do our little parts. And, at the end of the day, it's good you realize some parts of the real story. I realize some other parts of the real story, and we act accordingly. We speak about it. You speak with many people in your podcast. You're spreading the news, which is a great thing. At the end of the day, and at the end of your life and my life, I would like to be able to look into my face or in the mirror and be able to say, look, I wasn't able to change the course of the world, but I did my little share. I stayed as good as I could. I tried to save who are mine and who I love. But, we shouldn't be sad if we don't succeed tomorrow to change the world. I'm right now on a journey back to joy. And in one of the stories I told my kids, I learned that we Christians are obliged to be joyful.
Mm.
We have a joy mandate. And it's not always easy. I read the word joy a lot of times in songs, in church songs, in books, in the Bible, la la la. But I'm going through a time in my life where I suddenly realize, wow, it can be very difficult to be joyful. It can be hard work to smile and to laugh. And maybe on a larger scale, the last 2 years have been a lesson that against all odds and against what the government and media says, we shouldn't be depressed, but always try to be joyful. And the place where we met, David, is one of these places. I love this place for that joy aspect.
Yeah, there's something about that truckers rally to the people on the overpasses, and that just the wholesome goodness, ordinary people who love family, God, truth, freedom. It's just it's so familiar. This is the thing about heaven and God. It's not some bizarre science fiction alternate reality heaven. Heaven is home, and we are natural there. We're more natural than we've ever been. We're more ourselves than we've ever been, and we'll recognize each other more than we've ever recognized each other before, if God willing we get there. It's God is the author of nature, and he's the author of our human nature, and he's the author of that normalcy. This is the surprising thing about God, is that when we think about us, we think we're ordinary. When we think about God, he's extraordinary. But that extraordinariness of God just means he's more ordinary. He's more ordinary. He's not less ordinary. He's more ordinary. And when we're with him, we're comfortable. We have peace. When we're with Satan, we're agitated. We're uptight. When we're following the goading, the prodding of Satan, we don't have peace. But when we're with God, we're at peace because we are ourselves, and to greater or lesser degrees, because we're on a voyage here. We're on a spiritual quest for virtue and love. And so, I often reflect on the normalcy of God, and the truckers movement really hammered that home to me. How the regular small things and the regular unknown people, it's not the rock stars, it's not the celebrities from Hollywood. Those are not the people that melt our hearts, unless they're doing a good job of portraying an ordinary, touching human, right? Like they're faking it. But you could actually just go and meet a regular human and they're touching. So we don't need Hollywood for that.
David, that relates directly. I would like to illustrate what you might have just said. I love what you say. I think I understand it. And I had an encounter right at 80 Wellington Street, standing in front of a 1985 rig, white Kenworth or something, looking through the windshield, seeing a 65-year-old guy, small guy, trucker. I looked down, car plate, Saskatchewan. And I was standing there at -18, realizing that this 65-year-old almost retiree has driven down from Saskatoon to Ottawa to defend his grandchildren's right to personal and bodily autonomy. And I was so moved by this extra, ultra, mega
uber ordinary.
uber ordinary guy. And he saw me crying. And then he opened the door and I said, come over. And I was so moved, I couldn't even speak. We just shook hands and it was all good. Then my friend came, asked what do they need? Can we do something? No, all good. We've got gasoline. All right. And that was an encounter I will not easily forget. That ordinary guy was heaven sent.
Wow. And what I was getting at with this whole thing with the truckers and Ottawa and everything was that we feel that, you know, in that gathering where you and I met, you know, you feel that energy, that live and let live attitude where, you know, our differences, which might have been aggravating 2 or 3 years ago, were non-issues. All of the things that used to separate people became a non-issue on the streets of Ottawa and in this place where you and I met. Okay? Because why? Because we have a common enemy and we have common core principles which are undeniable and which put into perspective, this is the key word, they put into perspective the little niggling criticisms that we might have about, oh, you belong to this religion, or you have this, you're a vegan, I'm a meat eater, whatever it might be, you know, you're on the left, I'm on the right. I can honestly tell you that I've met people on the left and on the right, and they just don't care. They don't care because they know, first of all, they know that it's a bunch of theater anyway and they're being manipulated. And what matters, like the things that really matter are very, very few, and they're very, very simple, and they're very commonsensical. So those of us who have common sense and that have the free use of common sense and that have not abandoned our common sense, those of us who have not abandoned our common sense come together, and we appreciate that, we recognize that. So just to wrap up, what are you going to leave the people with so they can go away and think about God and religion and freedom, truth, beauty, justice, goodness, life, health? What do you want? What message do you want to leave?
I talked about the joy, which I really like as a topic and as a concept,
as an experience.
As a personal experience, many people believe that the Catholic Church or Catholic Mass is all about kneeling and guilt. No, not at all. It's mainly about joy. I like that message very much, and those of you listening who have never gone to a church, well, yeah, it seems very strict rites, and it may be new, but I would like to leave you with a little anecdote. Easter Sunday. To make it special, I brought my entire family to a evangelical, I call them disco churches. So we went there. They had announced on Facebook and YouTube this singer and this group and so on. So there's a stage and there's mainly songs and music. And then there was a part of the Bible written and interpreted in form of an interview, so really well done. Then more music, and we, as the public, we would be sitting all the time. So I brought my 10 and my 14-year-old boys there, and surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, on the way back, I said, "So, what do you think? We go there more often?" They prefer the Catholic Church. They find it more um, uh, more not graceful, more reward. No, not rewarding. Graceful in the sense it's and more active too. You go to the front, you kneel, you sit, you stand, you sing. So those who listen and those who never went to Catholic Church, I invite you to come by once. Let yourself impregnate with the smell and with the pictures and the beautiful artifacts you can see and the songs and the org. And maybe you like it and maybe you find some joy.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of joy listening to you and meeting you and talking to you today. And I hope you'll come back because there's no reason not to come back and dive more deeply into our Catholic faith and into the things that you love. I want to talk about your most memorable experiences in the confessional without going into great detail about your sins, unless you want to. But just the experience of walking out of that confessional and feeling like you're walking on air. I'm sure you have a story about that, and all of us Catholics do. Those of us who have been great sinners, at least. I don't know. Maybe you weren't a great sinner. I don't know. We'll get into that. We'll get into all sorts of stuff. And the Bible and the sacraments and the councils, the saints. I want to talk about the saints with you. Some of your favorites. So I do hope you come back. I did go to church with Tom Meunier to watch him play organ. He's one of my guests. He's been on twice now. He didn't play the organ. He played the grand piano because the organist is sick. Unfortunately, she's an elderly lady at my old parish, Saint Enfant Jésus de Mayolène. And he did an amazing job. And if you were sleepy and you thought church was boring, you would have been getting a different impression when you hear him on the piano and singing. Wow, wow, wow. It's amazing. I cried during the Ave Maria that he did. I cried.
I would love to come.
Next Sunday.
In some private little concert. The Yamaha keyboard. I would love to hear him play the piano and sing.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So I hope you come.
Not far away from my home, and I'm going to ask you after the show to give me the exact name and address of that parish.
Done. So you'll come back and talk to me again on the podcast?
Yeah, gladly. It was very nice. Thanks for having me. And anytime. Yes, David.
I hope to see you soon. Tommy's only going to be playing for the next couple of weeks, so make sure I'll send you the information. Try to come either next week or the week after. And we're hoping and we're praying that he'll get a permanent gig there. Now, this is not to say that we're praying for the death of the elderly organist, but she might survive but not come back. And we're hoping for the best for her. I don't know her personally, but she's an elderly lady that's been this is the second oldest parish in Montreal. And so we wish her well, obviously, but we also want our friend Tommy to get this gig at my old parish so I can go there. So maybe it's a bit of a selfish desire that I have, but we'll let God decide.
We do. Good.
God bless you. I love you. And I've got a mass being said for you every day until the end of time, you and your family, a perpetual mass. I set my guests up with a perpetual mass. So you and your family will be getting the graces of the mass every day till the end of time. And if you end up in purgatory, you're still going to be getting those graces every day, so it'll shorten your stay.
Namaste.
Namaste. So we'll talk soon, my friend.
Thanks again.
Have a good evening.
Bye, David.
Bye-bye. Bye.